Welcome to a new episode of the Tolkien Experience Podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Luke.
Each episode, we share with you an interview of a Tolkien scholar or fan.
That's right. In these interviews, one of us asks our guest to respond to 6 questions that help us learn about their personal Tolkien experience.
All of this is made possible by our supporters on Patreon, so we want to thank them and encourage you to check out the community there.
We are so excited to share this podcast with you. So without any more delay, let me introduce our guest. For this episode, I had the chance to catch up with Marcel Aubron-Bülles, also known as the Tolkienist. Marcel was the founder of the German Tolkien Society, and you'll often find him on his blog, thetolkienist.com, at his Patreon account, or really wherever Tolkien fans gather. So without any further ado, let's get into our questions with Marcel. So Marcel, would you go ahead and tell us how you were introduced to Tolkien's work?
A couple of years ago, unfortunately quite a few years ago, I stayed with my family during the summer holidays in a beautiful sort of coastal town in then Yugoslavia. And the first day I got this huge sunburn because I'm pretty palish. And I had to stay indoors while my family went outside to go for the beach and have fun. And the only thing that we had there to read was a 3-volume, 3-book box of a book I had never seen before. And that was The Lord of the Rings. And I started reading that. It took me about 2.5 days. And then when I came back home to Cologne, my hometown, I went to the British Library and got every book on Tolkien. And that's how it started.
Yeah, so in that reading, is there any particular passage that stuck out to you as something that you wanted to go back to and learn more about?
Well, there are a couple of things, and I think that a lot of other Tolkien fans feel sort of the same about this, is that when you do sort of like the annual reread, as many people do, there is a single passage that usually stands out that you look at, always closer. To me at the time, I'm pretty sure it was the Ride of the Rohirrim and, coming to Minas Tirith and the words of Theoden, right now. And that's definitely a passage that I wanted to go back to.
Yeah. Is that still one of your favorite parts to come back to?
It very much is, because I very much appreciate the character, the figure of Theoden, as the sort of king that has been betrayed by, Grima Wormtongue and being influenced by Saruman, and then coming back at the end of his life to, continue being true, heroic, and doing the best that he can for his people and his kingdom. So it's one of my favorite scenes, and I usually tend to sort of suppress a tear or two every time I read it.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. I just finished a reread with a young student that I'm tutoring at the moment. And we just finished reading through the appendice with Aragorn and Arwen. And after all the stuff that's been going on this last year, that was a hard read through for both of us.
Yeah, understandably.
So when you think about all the different times that you've interacted with Tolkien's work, what is your fondest experience of Tolkien's work?
Oh, wow. As some of you may know, I'm a little bit older. I'm closing in on the 50th birthday, so I'm really hoping for another huge adventure then. And I've come to read Tolkien in very different situations, very different circumstances. But I have to admit that when we founded the German Tolkien Society almost 25 years ago, and we had our first sort of general meeting, and people came together from all over Germany, and I think we were just 17 people or something. But welcoming people in that place in Cologne for the very first time and saying the words, "Thanks to the man who brought us all together," that definitely, to this day, one of my most special memories, to actually get people together and enjoy Tolkien as a fellowship.
Yeah, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about what that process was actually like. Like, how did you decide to start up the German Tolkien Society, and how did you go about doing that?
Well, I'm sorry for laughing, but the thing back then was I went to the Tolkien Society's Oxenmoot, which is the annual event of the Tolkien Society in Oxford, for the first time in 1994. And it was basically short after I have sort of read The Lord of the Rings. And then in one of the books that I got from the British Library, there was at the back of the book was a note saying, if you feel like meeting other Tolkien fans, why don't you write to the Tolkien Society? And I became a member. I was one of the first German members of the Tolkien Society. And then some of the people from the committee asked me, would you like to be the European representative? Which would mean writing to Tolkien fans who were members of the Tolkien Society in all of Europe. And I did that. And it was a lot of fun because you got to know people from different countries and you wrote letters and, all still paper and pen and stuff, no internet. And then I went to Oxenmoot for the first time. And Priscilla Tolkien welcomed fans to the family's home. And it was really one of the most wonderful weekends of my life. And then I realized, talking to a very charming Finnish young man who had maybe a vodka or two too many, that they had sort of like 11 societies. He said, well, every Finnish city has one society. And I thought, how is it possible that Finland, which is quite a lovely country, but not really big, has like 11 societies, and the German, we didn't have one. We simply didn't have a Tolkien society. And when I came back, I thought about how could you possibly do this? How could you start a literary society? And the first thing I did was I founded a special interest group with the largest role-playing community, the Guild of Fantasy Role Players. And we did that for 1, 2, 3 years. We actually did that for quite a number of years. We did our first Tolkien events, etc., etc. And then I realized that there were enough people interested in Cologne and the area to actually have enough members and interest to start the society. And then I sort of asked 6 of my student fellow friends and everything, and, used the whip of the Balrog to get them to sign this in red ink, of course. And we needed 7 people, and that's how I did it. So I simply went ahead and asked people, sell your soul and sign that piece of paper. And they did.
Wow. It takes such internal motivation to do something like that. So I'm always inspired by stories like that.
Well, it's just a lot of fun because the thing is, when I started out somewhere in the 80s, I thought I was the only Tolkien fan in the world because there was no one else. There was no internet. You couldn't talk to anyone. And for, I think, 2 to 3 years, I really thought I was the only one. And then I wrote an English exam paper, and my English teacher came past my table when I was dawdling away because I sort of managed to sort of finish the exam. And I was writing little doodles on Tolkien and the monogram. And he came past me and said into my ear, "Ooh, my precious." And I thought, oh my God, there is someone else. There's a second person who knows Tolkien. And from that moment, I thought, okay, I'm going to do a high school student thing, and we did a week full of Tolkien and drawing and painting and doing role-playing games, etc. So I did just add step by step, bit by bit, more people and find more people who would be interested to sharing this experience. And the more people you get to know, the bigger the fun is, because the more the merrier.
Mm-hmm. So before we go into the next question, I kind of wanted to use that more the merrier sentiment as a stepping off point, because you are very active in the fan community in general, and you are pretty aware of the different adaptations. And of course, there's a new adaptation coming forward.
Oh, yeah.
And we've had some conversations in the past about how we feel about it, but I did kind of want to ask you, how are you feeling about the Amazon series coming up?
I am so looking forward to this because having seen, generations of Tolkien fans joining the community and seeing new people coming in with new ideas and new creativity, it's just absolutely amazing. And I want to see, you can only judge a product once you've seen it. So if we want to talk about how good is the series, how fun is it, how close to the story is it, whatever, we can't really do that. Right now, we know next to nothing. It's just Second Age and it's Sauron and a couple of things. But no, I'm looking forward to it because it's going to open up new horizons, new possibilities for new people to come and, join the throng and be part of the fellowship. And I'm quite happy to see it. I will reserve judgment, and I'd love to be critical about tons of things, but I'm seeing so much enthusiasm and so many people looking forward to it. It's really, it's almost like, 1999, 2000, when you were there and you had this feeling, oh my God, something big is going to happen, something huge is going to happen. Everyone is hoping for it to be really good. And that's what I'm really hoping for, that it's an excellent series and that's just going to blow everyone away.
I'm much the same. I'm anticipating more than I'm nervous about it. I'm excited to see the new people that I think will come into Tolkien fandom through the series as much as I am the series itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just a great opportunity, I think. I mean, there are so many side stories, little things that are just hinted at in the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings and the appendices, etc., that you could possibly touch upon. There are so much. It's a huge canvas. It's basically an empty canvas, and it'd be lovely to see a great illustrated new story to come to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our next question, for someone who has been as involved with Tolkien's work as you have for such a long time, I'm very curious about how has the way that you've approached Tolkien changed over time?
Well, I think that in the beginning, particularly when you're a younger reader, or you come to the films young and you see them for the first time, you read the books for the first time. With a lot of people, it really inspires you to be creative. In my case, for example, I did tons of calligraphy. You look at the tables at the back of the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings, and you come up with timelines, and you do Tengwar calligraphy and this kind of stuff. And you can see, particularly in the last 1 or 2 years, while sort of the hype for the Amazon series was building up, that people were starting to create new art, original characters, fan fiction characters. And I think that if you see all of this happening right now, and the series hasn't even started yet, we don't really know anything about it, and people are already so excited, that I'm really very much looking forward to seeing completely new ideas and completely new ways of going about Tolkien. And it's always the question, how do you go about Tolkien? How do you come to Tolkien? Some people come from role-playing games, some people come from tabletop, some people from video games. And in the end, it's my personal interest, of course, is in the end, it'd be lovely if people actually pick up the books and go to the original and read the stories that Tolkien wrote, because, obviously I very much appreciate and love them, and I think they're a great read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I'm hopeful that it will lead to not just fans, of course, which is wonderful, but also people who want to go and read the books. So that leads us into our last question a little bit. Would you ever recommend Tolkien's work, and why or why not?
This is one of those questions that have happened to me quite a few times before, because when you have friends who you read a book, any fantasy book, any science fiction book, they go, oh, I really love this one. It was a great story. Marcel, you've read so many fantasy books. Do you have something else to suggest? And it's really difficult. It's more or less like a sales pitch in any kind of sale you could possibly imagine. And you will have to do the same thing as any good salesman or saleswoman would possibly have to do, is find out what that particular person, that individual in front of you, has come to appreciate. So you would have to listen first. And, you would have to ask, what drew you to the story? What did you like about it? Was it like the characters? Was it the landscapes or places? Was it the plot line? Was it a bit of, did you want to have battles? Did you have romance and love? And what is the thing that you're really, really on about? Mm-hmm. And I can sort of sell Tolkien usually for one main reason, is that I'm really enthusiastic about these stories, and I can try and figure out, what would you like to do? Is someone, would you like a children's story, which would be The Hobbit? Would you have a massive high fantasy epic, which is Lord of the Rings? Or would you go into what some people have termed the Elvish phone book, then go for Silmarillion, But there are also these the minor stories on the back that a lot of people don't really know about, autobiographical, like Leaf by Niggle, or you have Farmer Giles of Ham. So really love to recommend Tolkien on so many different fronts, but it's always an individual choice. And, you will have to ask about what people really love to read and want to read. And all of the academics out there who would like to go into theology or medievalist studies or linguistics, Tolkien is always a great choice.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot of those interests that he intersects, doesn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, that's one of the fields that is still going strong, is the search for the sources. That with John Garve's book that came out recently, Tolkien's Worlds, where did he take all the imagination from? Where are the inspirations? What were the books that he read? What were the places that he stayed at or lived through or experienced? So there's a lot of stuff to go through. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I like to do with these podcasts is I like to hear, and I know our listeners like to hear, about our guests' new things. What are they doing right now that they can log on to, get involved with, hear about, read? So do you have any projects going on right now that our listeners could engage with?
Well, it's a bit of a coincidence because I hadn't really planned to do that. But because of 2020 having been such a difficult year for many of us, I decided in last May to start a Patreon account, which is basically I'm writing articles and posts and, sharing interesting tidbits about Tolkien and his life and his works. And it's, for people who are really happy to support me, or, not only financially, but who come along on sort of an adventure. And they sort of know already what is going to happen, but as I mentioned before, I'm closing in on my 50th birthday. I wanted to go on another adventure, and that is actually getting my PhD. So I have found a Dr. Vater, a kind professor at a German university, who is going to take me through, I hope, fully a good dissertation. And I'm definitely going to share some of that work that I'm going to do there with my Patreon community, but also, of course, the wider Tolkien community on my blog, thetolkienist.com.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely the upcoming sort of project that is going on. I will be moving to Jena. It's going to be at the University of Jena in Thuringia in Germany. And that's definitely something I'm working on right now.
Excellent. Wow, that sounds very exciting.
It very much is, and I'm very nervous.
I recently finished my PhD last year, and, I like to say if I can get through it, anyone can get through it.
That is very helpful advice.
So do you have any ideas about what you want to focus on in your PhD?
Yes, I do. I have sort of settled the subject. I'm not giving away too much right now because I'm still sort of in the preparatory stage of things. But I will be on basically The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, and some of his minor works. So basically it's going to be at everything. I don't want to give away too much too soon, but I'm pretty sure that my professor, my Dr. Vater, is going to whip me into shape if I'm not going to show something that I'll be doing this summer. And I'll definitely be sharing that with the Patreon account and with the Tolkien community and the wider sense of the world.
Well, it's always a wise thing to undersell instead of oversell. So what we'll have to do is just have you back when you're ready to share it publicly.
Yeah. I'd love to do that because obviously once you've reached that stage, I mean, you've done that and you know how it is when you can actually have something to show and share. That is definitely something I'm very much looking forward to.
Well, Marcel, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really wonderful time listening to you talk about your Tolkien experience with us.
Thanks very much for having me, Luke. And I'm looking forward to the next opportunity.
We are so thankful that we have such gracious scholars and fans who want to share their Tolkien experience with us and with you.
We have a lot of fun making these podcasts.
Yes, we do. It's always exciting to talk to fans and scholars about their Tolkien experience.
If you want to know more about the ways to connect with this episode's guest, we provide show notes at tolkienexperience.com. Also, don't forget to check out our Patreon and to follow the podcast on your favorite social media sites.
That's right. Find us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/Tolkien Experience. We're also on Facebook as Tolkien Experience and Twitter as @Tolkien Experience. So don't forget to like, follow, share, and comment because we love interacting with you just as much as we enjoy talking to our guests. You can also follow our personal Twitter accounts. You will find me as @LukeB.Shelton.
And me as @AaronL.Palmadill. You can find the podcast on all major podcast services, including Apple, Stitcher, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, and we truly hope that in a way it contributes to your own Tolkien experience.